morning looking at CAD sheets and counting who responds and who doesn't. That's his first part of his day.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other old business, gentlemen? Hearing none, that'll bring us down to 13A, new business, be Board of Supervisors, Communications, Chairman Vic Ingram.
Hey, good evening. Let me start off by letting you guys know that our last business meeting, that last piece of funding was approved. So we've got that taken care of. So don't come and ask for no more money now. Y'all hear that? But I'm glad to say that we did get that passed. And that was the, to order for the matrix to work, that was the funding that was necessary. And of course, it was spread out across all the departments. And of course, it wasn't as much as you were probably hoping for, but I know you're going to address that here in just a little bit. I have the honor of introducing my newest colleague, Mr. Robert Tucker. He came tonight. He's in the back. He is the Bannister District Supervisor, and it's a real joy to have him on the board. I asked him if he wanted to come down and say a few words, but he's got a bum foot, so he said he would just take a rain check on that. But it's good to have him here. But I did want to thank you guys for everything that you do, for your service, and girls, that is. And most importantly, if I don't get to tell you Merry Christmas, let me tell you now. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Tucker. It's glad to have you here tonight. Glad to have you on board. All right, we're going to go down to item B. And thank you, Vic, for the update. We're going to go down to item B, budget discussions. It has me listed for 10 minutes, but I'm going to actually yield my time to Chief Fowler, and then we'll go from there.
Gee, thanks. The budget process has been discussed extensively with Fire and Rescue. Up until a few years ago, the budget process included Fire and Rescue each and every time to represent their needs and explain what their needs was and why they had the needs. It seems that in the last few years that's gone by the wayside, and it seems like it's just a tuck this in or tuck that in, and we'll live with it. That being said, the Fire and Rescue Association has asked for representation in the budget process where they can sit down and represent what's going to be set aside and what's going to be proposed for Fire and Rescue in addition to what's being done for public safety and their personnel. And I don't know, do you want me to go into the rest of it as to what they requested be represented last night? Is this a proper time for that?
Yeah, I believe it's a proper time, but on the first, let's do the first part of that. So there's a meeting, there's a meeting at the Public Safety Office on December the 14th. That's next Wednesday, correct, Scott? At 3 o'clock. And that's to discuss, county staff to discuss the 2024 budget. Is that correct? I'll make sure I said that right. The next year's budget. That process has started now. And so I think that would be a good time to, if everybody agrees, to have the association have some representation there, and I would like at least 2 commissioners. Now, we cannot, I had to stress this because Chris Limp emailed me before and said, make sure you remind everybody you cannot have more than 2 commissioners there, or it has to be made a public meeting. Now, there's nothing that says we can't do that if you all want to be involved with that meeting, but they just may have to do some rearranging and rescheduling. So that's kind of the first part of this discussion is, do we want to send 2 individuals from this body and allow the association to go and sit down and discuss the budget needs and then bring it back, the information, next Wednesday at 3 o'clock? Or do we want all to be included in that discussion, and they're going to have to then would move the meeting and make it a public meeting?
I know when Chris was discussing the meeting, he was talking about just being a meeting with you and Dean.
All right.
So,
unfortunately, I will not be able to make the 3 o'clock. So before that meeting was set without any input from me, so I can't be there at that time. And I would like to leave it up to my colleagues if some of you guys, we got plenty of capable people here that could go if any of y'all are available at that time to go represent this body.
I'll be happy to go if you want me to.
Yeah, either one of
Think
us.
I'd be-
I can go.
It can be 2 from this body, so I'd like to see at least 2 go.
Well, will Chief Fowler go representing the association, or will it, how is that conflict coming?
I can be there.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not an actual voting member,
He's not
so
a voting
yeah, he's
member,
just
okay.
representing the association,
That
so
way
he
they get
wouldn't.
their representation, and we can get two also. Is that correct? The
I-
way I'm hearing.
Is that
That's
how
correct.
you understood it as well, Scott? If we had
Yes.
two from here plus Dean, and if he wanted to take Mike or somebody, or Matt?
And if I'm correct, Dean is really not a member of the commission, he's just a representative.
Right,
So I would think that would mean two from the board.
okay.
Okay. But I can be available that day if need be. Unless some of the other commissioners want to step in.
Y'all jump in the ring. All right, so am I hearing Commissioner Alan Casper, Commissioner Kermit King? Is everybody okay with that? With sending them? Do we need to put that in a motion, you think, gentlemen? Or just ask you guys to go and bring back report back what you talk about? I don't really see a need for a motion. You just go into a meeting, and then y'all can bring back the information. And then Chief Fowler, if you and another representative from the association would like to go, and we'll
Okay.
just let Chris, Scott know who's coming.
Yeah, just let us know.
And y'all gonna do that at the conference, in the conference room at the Public Safety Building, correct?
Yeah, we'll do it in the same room where we have our little meetings about the other stuff.
Okay. All right, so that's the first part. So now, Chief, if you would like to go ahead and start with the second part of the budget request from the association.
Okay, the overwhelming discussion started with the fact that most agencies are going to run out of fuel money in what their allocated funding is right after the middle of the year. My agency, I feel sure, will be out by the end of December, if not January. And that's kind of the resounding thing is coming from all the agencies in the county. If you go back and look, according to the Consumer Index, the fuel prices has gone up 55% since 2020. Also, the rate of inflation has gone up almost 20% in the last 3 years. So the question was asked last night if I would bring it back and represent it to the commission to request a 20% increase in funding for fire and rescue for the coming budget year and develop a matrix to where the fire departments get a per-call fund just like the EMS agencies. Right now, we're getting a fund for the EMS agencies per call that they respond to, and the fire departments has requested the same in turn.
Okay. Any questions for Chief Fowler on that information he just presented?
Fowler, were you talking about a 20% increase on the overall budget?
Yes, sir.
To the total budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay, not just to the fuel item budget?
That's correct.
Would it be appropriate to think about doing it just to the fuel item budget? Maybe more than 20%, of course, but tie it to the, or are you trying to tie the inflation factor into it also?
Well, I'm trying to tie the inflation factor in, and I'll give you, for instance, one of the guys there last night was talking about it. He said he bought a set of turnout gear a year ago. It was $2,900. He said he bought a set last week, and it's $3,799. So, I mean,
Okay.
it's going sky high.
And I'm not debating either way. It's
Right, I
Do you
understand.
think 20% is the right number? Have you researched that, or is that just a random
That
number?
was the number that came from the floor last night. I hadn't sat down and actually researched it, but I know over the past 3 years, we hadn't kept up with the inflation rate with the budget that we've received for the last 3 years. So we're in the hole to start with.
It sounds like 20% might not cover no more than the inflation, much less the fuel cost, but I think you're headed in the right direction with that train of thought. I would support it.
And I know this is more talking about capital, but just give you guys a little insight on, I mean, everybody's dealing with it, but with the fire trucks, you know, in Gretna, we purchased a new engine to service our community in 2020, and that was $608,000. I asked the salesman that just sold us our next truck, we're replacing another 20-year-old truck, and the turnaround time on this new truck we just ordered is 750 days. That's the first factor. And that truck, which is not a lot different from the other truck we got, is $953,000. And I asked him, I said, well, how much would the truck we bought from you in 2020 be if we bought that exact same truck today? And he said you'd be about $850,000. So it's went up roughly $250,000 since 2020. You know, that's what we're trying to deal with at these organizations when we're replacing equipment and apparatus, you know, air packs. Air packs just went up again. Everybody that gets the air packs, they just went up again. And it's running away with the rate we can try to keep up.
Chief Fowler, from, to outfit a firefighter, from, I guess, from my standpoint, from turnout gear to air pack, what is it costing now?
I think
Roughly.
I hadn't priced an air pack since this last increase. 6 months ago, it was about $7,900 for an air pack. And as one of the fire chiefs alluded to last night, he's looking at $3,799 for a set of turnout gear. So may as well say $3,800. So at the end of the day,
So you're
what's that $13,000 we're dealing with to put a firefighter in a fire?
Do you think that the Fire and Rescue Association, as well as the commission, would be better off to go and listen to that budget workshop, and maybe come up with like almost an exact figure moving forward rather than just a percentage? You know, it's like Bert said, it may be more than that. Or do you think we should try to address the fuel?
Well, Scott, you correct me. The budget's got to be prepared and in place for them to start reviewing by the end of December. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds right. I've heard Chris and them talk about it because he works on it just about every day.
I
trying to
want
get
to
numbers together.
say it's like a week, Mr. Ingram, is it a week before Christmas?
Well, they're working on it now. I'm not sure of the exact deadline as far as having it completed, but it's a process going right up to
Right.
April.
And I think that trying to get an exact number is probably going to put us outside of that window to get a proposal together. Because we talked about that last night, trying to sit down and put actual figures to pen to paper and get figures, but I don't know that we've got that time.
Do you think Chris knows at this point moving forward what the increase looks like? I mean, or an idea?
He hadn't really mentioned to me anything about, you know, what it looked like. Like I say, I know he works on them numbers every day trying to figure it out. I think it's going to be a pretty tough year from what they talk like. And it's just like everything. Everything's gone up so much, it affects everybody. So I do know he said it's going to be a tough year, but I haven't heard any exact information.
So by any chance, with looking at that percentage, were any numbers run to see what that total would be for the year?
No, sir.
That's a good question.
Because, I mean, 20% of whatever is going to be extreme.
What's your total budget for the volunteers right now, Scott? Do you know?
No, sir, I do not.
1.8, maybe 1.8, is that right?
All right,
You're fine.
we are here now trying to help create a budget for next year. How does the Fire and Rescue Commission, when they have the same pitfalls we do as far as trying to generate a budget for next year and falling short, how do they address, when they need more money, what is the process they do and how do they come up with their figures?
What I know about it the short time I've been here, they more or less come up with a budget that they think they need or what they think will get them through the year. Then they go to these meetings, because I think they meet for a week straight, and they sit down and they have to prove their need, more or less.
That's correct.
It's almost like you have to go to the meeting with your wish list, and you go in that meeting and you try to persuade them that you need this and you need that. I think sometimes you get part of it, sometimes you may not get any of it.
Well, I was just trying to see if something they did would help us, help Dean and his people.
Mr.
Fair
Mayhew,
budget.
Mr. Mayhew, to answer your question, Mr. Cassell did it, it's $360,000.
What was that figure again?
$360,000.
1.8 times 20%. It's 360. So you double that at 40%.
And again, this is our first year with this commission since it's been reorganized, but it seems like the same problems we had with the old commission. We're here tonight trying to discuss a budget when we've never even been briefed yet, this commission, on any of the budget talk to this point. So how are you supposed to make any kind of educated suggestions tonight? Because we're supposed to act as the liaisons between the board and the association and the volunteer agencies and all that. And so I don't want to fail any of those individuals. And I wish we would get, and again, I'll take it, I'm the chairman of this body, maybe I should have been asking earlier, but I wish we would get more involvement earlier in the year, because it seems like every time, well, it snuck up on us and it's going to be a tough year, and we can't sit down and hammer out. We know, if we take 20%, that's probably not going to happen. But can we get 14%? What's that number that we really need to operate? Because if people are running out of fuel, that's a big deal. That's a problem. We had 18 agencies run out of fuel last year, fuel money, in this county. That comes straight from Chris Key. So obviously we have a shortfall in that category on our budget. And I'm sure there's others, like I said, with the capital issues, we haven't even addressed that. Is there going to be any ask for increase on the fire trucks apparatus money? The county allocates, I think, $200,000 right now. New engines running you at $900,000. That's a big gap. So, I don't know what the solution is, but I feel like we're going to be hard pressed by next Wednesday, to come up with a perfect plan.
Mr. Ingram, what was the county's favorability for the past year's budget? Do we know that? Because, that's really
What was the county's what now?
What was the favorability that the county had with our budget last year? Because if there's no money in the budget for this additional funding, this is a moot point. But
Well, it's always tough, and, as far as the respective departments coming to prepare or present their wish list, if you will, the capital improvement, and it's really not too late, so I wouldn't worry about it right now. Now is prime time to sort of get together and figure out, what you need and make proposals. This 20% is an arbitrary number, and it might be something that you could meet again and come up with a better number, but 20% is quite an increase on a specific budget, as you guys well know. So, but over the next few months, it'll be a lot of talking, a lot of figuring, a lot of negotiating as far as coming to terms with what money we can allocate based on what your needs are. And then when we finalize and vote on the budget, it's a done deal at that point, as you well know. But, now's the time to talk, to make your case and to show collectively what you need, and then for us to see what we can help you out with. Maybe that's not a good answer, but I can tell you that it's going to be a tough year. We came through this budget cycle without having a tax increase and coming up with a balanced budget, and for the most part, most departments ask for a lot of things. They do come with the wish list, and they did not get everything, but listen, that's part of the deal. You come asking big, expecting to get what you can, and often which is much lower than you ask for. But as far as the general consensus of the board, we want to do all that we can to help you guys to make sure you don't have any kind of shortages, but it comes back to the question, well, where's the money going to come from? So that's what we have to work through over the next few months. So, if you could tweak that 20%, that would, that would be a nice thing. And if you want to look at a separate, line item as far as the fuel, to where we can address that's a possibility as well. But it's all through the negotiating process. And so I just suggest that between the association and commission, just come together and come up with more of a viable proposition for us, something we can work with. I know it's Christmas time, but I just didn't want to give you any false hope. But it's going to be a tough year.
Can I ask what public safety's total budget is for the year?
I do not know that.
Because I think their allotted budget was what, 1.6?
and we get 1.2.
Don't quote me on those numbers,
Right.
please. I don't have them in front of me, so I couldn't tell you exactly. But it's pretty close, not real far off, between the two.
That's the reason I was asking how they come up with their projection. It may help us, but I don't think, according to what you said,
I've never
y'all
been
just-
involved in the budget process, never been, I've never even had to participate in it. I may get to this year, but I hadn't yet, so.
It sounded like Mr. Fowler based the 20% on some pretty good figures, the inflation rate and the cost of energy, cost of fuel going up. So I think his 20% was based on something that was realistic. He may tweak it a little bit, but how much effort do you put into trying to tweak it and you hit a target, you don't know what the target's going to be. It's a moving target. I would certainly support a 20% increase, unless somebody comes up with some kind of figures that shows it a lot less or a lot more.
I mean, because to put it in, the way I try to look at it in real terms, when we know that it's going to be a tough year, but that means that's across the board. Many of your departments depend on not only the funding we get from the county, but the donations we get from the citizens we serve. And these citizens are having a tough year too. And that affects things. And so for whether you're talking a large department or a small department, if you're replacing an aging piece of apparatus, and even after the county funding comes through on that apparatus, you've got departments, and this is just purely a ballpark figure, some are more, some are less, but you've got departments facing a payment on a piece of apparatus of, say, $50,000 a year for the next 15 years. And then during that course of time, then other expenses come about. The apparatus has to be replaced. So, particularly for a volunteer department, looking at a $50,000 payment on a piece of apparatus for the next 15 years, that's a pretty significant, burden for them to bear.
Well, that's also too, I think what we've run into now since COVID has kicked in, it's accelerated everything at such a rate that when we get this 23, 24 money, even in a perfect world, if we get that 20% increase, by the time we actually get that money allocated and can spend it, if we get the 20% in this perfect world, you're going to be 40% behind again. So you never really catch up. And that depends, like you said, depends on what fuel does again. And and it's, like you say, had a 55% fuel increase. And everybody in here pretty much knows what diesel does and does in the last 2 or 3 years. So I know the board has a tough decision on making it, but when you got these departments that still falling behind in just fuel alone.
And I think you would, I'm not saying I'm for it or against it, but I think the other part of what Chief Fowler brought up with the doing a pay-per-call for the standalone fire agencies, I think that's something that really needs to be looked at to see if it, how much it would cost and is it feasible, because that would help. It costs them money just like it costs anybody else money that's a dual agency to go and respond to fires, especially considering the size of our county, and with the fuel cost $5 a gallon for diesel, you may be driving 25, 30 minutes to assist another agency.
Well, and I'll give you another, Mr. King was talking about being in the hole after this is done, or if it's done. Last fiscal year, my agency was $9,100 over budget, over the county's allotment for fuel. So the $5,000 that was just approved, it's not going to get me back in the red in the black from last year for the $9,000 I was over, and I'm going to run out in January.
Mr. Ingram, you had mentioned something about maybe a line item for fuel. What was your thoughts on that as far as just an open line item to cover the fuel costs for all the agencies as they're using their fuel cards, or how was you thinking about addressing that?
I was thinking that because, with the variance in the departments as far as the equipment and response distances, it's such a variance there. So I was just sort of thinking that, maybe to set aside the fuel issue. Of course, I know as far as the county, we pay the fuel for the vehicles, we pay the electricity, the fuel for the heating of the buildings, the insurance. And I'm not really sure if there's, when it's broken down, because as far as the fuel itself, I hadn't seen those numbers. I just don't know. So I guess that's what I was thinking, is that when I hear the trouble of running out of money for fuel, I was thinking that maybe that we need to readdress that in some kind of fashion to where we don't have the dilemma of the worry or as far as running out of fuel. I guess what I'm trying to say is some way to make sure that we don't have this problem reoccurring each and every year. And I don't have a solution for that. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I guess what I was kind of entertaining or thinking about was that since the county initially sees that amount of money on these fuel cards or what have you, if they would actually just address that rather than handing it off to the agencies themselves.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That process changed, and you're right in your comment that you pay the fuel and the heating fuel and the electricity, but it changed a few years ago in the fact that it used to be we got block funding and the county paid those. Now it's taken out of our block funding. The money was increased, but it's kind of like it was moved to our responsibility.
Yeah, that's surely something that might need to be readdressed. And as far as the wish to be involved in the budget process, I think that's a very valid request, and I don't see why it can't happen. And so I just think that's something that needs to be discussed and worked on during these early stages to where we can move forward and won't have these shortfalls, because it's surely much involved, as you guys well know. But it would be nice if we just could carte blanche say, as far as fuel, we've got you covered. But once again, it's a budgetary issue, and some departments come to us and ask for quite a bit, and some don't, and some get a lot, and some don't get much, and it's just something we're going to have to work on. It's negotiating is going to be a big part of that through this budget cycle.
Well, I mean, I'm sure how the other county departments stack up for us fuel. Are they over budget?
I don't know.
I'm sure they are. I don't know how anybody could be, in budget. And Vic and Scott, something you guys can take back and ask, but I remember a couple years ago when they first started the commission and I was on at that time, I really enjoyed, they had Kim Vanderhyde come and speak. This body, I think, deserves, like you said, to be a part of that budget process, but it's hard without arranging additional meetings and having, so that's why we're sending a couple individuals, but it's still hard for them to come back and convey everything. So maybe having her come to our next meeting and do a little presentation on how they make the budget process and give us some information directly about fire and rescue, I think would be really important to this body and to the citizens at home and people watching in the audience. Like I said, we did that, and I thought that helped. And
Yeah,
so
I think that's a great idea, and she's wonderful as far as the financial side, and she can give you the history. And I'm sorry, I can't. Dean alluded to the block funding. That was way before my time. But, yeah, I would strongly suggest to get with Kim and start looking at the budgetary request and talking about what can and cannot be done, and just take it from there. But this is in the preliminary stages, and that's a good thing that we're having this conversation right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm listening to all this, and I'm a little naive to some of this stuff, but if you go into a budget meeting with a proposal to get 20%, it seems like a really big number. And if you're competing against other agencies or whoever for the same money, you need to come with some facts of why you need
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you definitely want to be educated on it, on what you're asking for. That way, when they ask why, it's a little easier to dispute if you got evidence of this is exactly why we need it. I think a large part of that, because it's such a complex how it works, you know, like Dean explained, the block funding comes from the county, but it's kind of our responsibility to spend it in the different avenues, how we need to spend it. But like with the fuel, you know, if we go over on our fuel, then we have to rob that money from somewhere else in the budget. But I think a lot of that information you was talking about, the Public Safety Department is going to have to help produce, you know, as far as your call volumes and things like that. And they keep up with, I know at least, I think Wendy used to send them out each quarter. Now she's trying to do it more often than that. She would send out a report of how much fuel you've used in the last quarter. Out of your, you know, if your allotted money, let's just say it was $10,000, she would send and say, okay, you've used 5,000 so far. She would also do that for electricity, heat and fuels, those type things. So some of that information is going to have to come from the county. But I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I think it's important to have those conversations because at the end of the day, the call volumes are continuing to rise. And we know in a perfect world, you know, all right, give us a 20%, we're ready to rock. And it is what it is, but we're probably not going to get that. But the fire departments in this county are running 100% of the fire calls. You know, they don't have any backup help. And then the EMS, they're running 80+% of the EMS calls. And with a county this size, the state of Rhode Island, you know, diesel fuel becomes a big issue real quick. So, you know, good luck to Alan and Kerman in that meeting.
We beat that horse a long time and we ain't got nowhere.
Yeah, that's right.
We've talked about it a lot, but we still don't have a resolution, so we need to have a plan moving forward. Are we going to ask Mr. Fowler to go back and present something that's different than the 20% based on something? Is that where we're at?
So at the meeting that takes place on the 14th, I mean, that's the meeting that you have to say, we got to have A, B, C, and D, or is that just a work session that would
I found out about the meeting last night at 7:45. That's why I don't have a presentation.
I found out about the meeting when I got this packet a couple days ago.
That being said, I'm assuming it's a work session. Is that right, Scott?
That's the way I understood it, yes.
So
It's not a meeting where you got to have your final numbers. I think it's a meeting where you go in and discuss what you need and how you're going to approach getting it, because we certainly don't have answers right now.
Well, could we have somebody from the county generate that report for the fuel that's been used so far?
I can reach out to Wendy tomorrow, or Scott can. I'm sure Scott will
Yeah,
get faster
I'm pretty
than
sure Chris keeps them numbers on hand.
she can. And I
Yeah.
know it was sent out at the end of the first quarter. That's how I knew where I stood on fuel. I had spent 61% of my fuel budget in the first quarter of the year. So I feel like they can come pretty close on those numbers. And I know last year, Ms. Vander Hyde told me that it was 18 agencies that went over in their budget on fuel. Now, the dollar figures I'm sure she can provide, but we probably need to get those as well. And I think we can probably come up with a better number in that work session. But like I say, I think that's going to take some grinding out, some paperwork and some numbers.
Yeah, and that's a lot to get together in 5 days. Take out the weekend, 4 days. And that I guess that's what I was alluding to earlier. I was just saying, and again, I'll take the heat for it. Vic says we're in good shape as far as time, so I'm not going to panic yet. But that's kind of what I was talking about. You know, we didn't even really know about this meeting, but that's part of this body's task is helping make suggestions for the budgets. So that would have been good to know ahead of time, so we could have had a little bit more planning to be ready for this. That's why it come up so quick last night, and the association said, okay, we need to present, we know kind of an idea of what we need, but we don't know exact, so we need to put something forward so we don't get left out. And I think that's how they come up with the 20% number.
Yeah, because, I mean, we can't just be focused on the fuel and the apparatus. I mean, come January and February, fuel costs to heat these departments. And, I mean, you got fire trucks full of water sitting in these departments. We've got to heat them. And that cost is we're going to find out that that's going to be significantly higher, too.
Yeah, I think it's important, you talk about medical supplies. Medical supplies isn't getting any cheaper. I'm sure county's feeling that too with their medic trucks. I know last year at Rutland, we spent over $20,000 in EMS supplies. I'm talking about Band-Aids and non-rebreathers and those type things. So, it's a lot to look at, but I think we gotta, like Mr. Sulla said, I think he hit it on the head. We kind of keep beating this horse. We don't have a plan, but I guess the best plan we have right now is we're sending representation from here. Alan and Kermit's going, and Dean's going to go, and I'm sure he's going to have someone else with him. We'll have staff there, members of the staff, and I guess we need to try to do our best case effort to have some of that information available for that meeting on, how many agencies are going to go over on fuel again. That should be easy to look at and say, if he's 60% in the first quarter, we know he's going to go over. So we ought to be able to look at everybody's and do that. And same thing with fuel and heating and all that stuff, and truck cost. And then y'all try to come up with a game plan and then bring it back to our next meeting, and we'll go from there. When do you guys have to present the budget to the public, Vic?
I'm thinking it's April.
April.
Yeah. Unless it changed, I was told that the department heads would come in like November, December with the capital improvement proposals, and then that's when Kim would start doing her marvelous work with numbers, and it's a work in progress, and so I think there's plenty of time there, and you've already started with a proposal of 20%, and you're somewhat verifying the need based on that, particularly with fuel. So it's just something that you need to work on and tweak, and you got a plan, you just need to move forward with it.
Okay. Yep. Fellow commissioners, I'm not trying to speak for y'all, but does that sound, I believe that's the best option we have right now. We don't have any other options. Just want to remind this body, our job is just to make recommendations to make sure fire and rescue works in this county for the citizens. It's up to the board, and they have a tough job, but it's up to them to ultimately decide what they do. So, Vice Chair, do you think we need to put that in the motion, who we're sending to the meeting and what the game plan is, or you think we have good enough? It's going to be in the minutes.
Yeah, it's in the minutes, and then we have a consensus.
Okay.
I think we have a consensus of most of the members here.
Okay. All right, good deal. All right, we look forward to hearing from you guys next month on how that meeting went, and again, if we can get Kim here sometime soon, that would be great. All right, that brings us down to item C, Fire and Rescue Memorial Update. I'll take that one. So we had a really good meeting last month. We got, we're still in the preliminary stages. I had no clue how much work was involved in trying to get something like this together, but Scott and Dean and Troy and Coleman and several individuals have been working on this project, and we've got hammered down kind of what we want. We've got hammered down kind of the paperwork on what it's going to take to be on the memorial or whatnot. Now we're kind of in that design phase of it, but it's a lot of questions that where do you put the cart before the horse type deal. One of those was establishing where we wanted to put the memorial. That was a big deal for the designer of where it was going to be, and we located a spot. We asked, this body here made a motion last month to use the property that the county already owns at the old Armory building right down here on Main Street, Chatham. It's a good spot. They already got a parking lot there to the right of the building. It'll be on Main Street. It's in central, the county seat. So we thought that was good. The executive team for the county staff, they had some questions, obviously, because it's their property, of what kind of utilities was going to be needed, who was going to maintain it, who was going to own it, those type things before we can really move forward and them saying, yes, you can use this property. And I guess that'll end up having to go to the board to say yes or no on us utilizing the property. So we met last month, went through all those questions, sent them back the best responses we could. I got an email back from Chris Slimp. He's the Director of Operations for the county. And after he met with the executive team and gave them our answers, I think they were pretty pleased with what they heard. And again, this is all in the just design phase. But we basically said, you know, we would like the county, once we finish the fundraising and the building and get it done, we would like the county to take ownership of it. It should be very little maintenance on it with the way we're designing it, and should be very little upkeep, but there will be some that'll have to be done and maintained, and we feel like it's the county's property, and it's kind of something that would draw people to come and look at, so we're looking at it like that as well. So tonight, that was going to be my request, was to the board to, would you guys agree to take ownership of this memorial once it's completed? And that come from staff, from Chris Slimp and the executive team. They felt like that was important for the board to be on board already, to say, yes, we'll take it once y'all get it built, and maintain it. Because that's important, because if they don't maintain it, then we're going to have difficulty keeping it up.
Let me try to answer some of your questions, and I did have a question or two. When Frankie Betterton was murdered on May the 17th, 20 years ago, I had the honor of being the chairman of our Law Enforcement Memorial Project, which the end result is that memorial in the courthouse square. We had to ask the board at the time permission to construct the memorial there, which they gladly gave approval of. And it did become county property, and it did fall under building and grounds as far as maintenance and upkeep. So I'm just saying that I would surely vote, but it would be a proposal to our board, and collectively we'd have to say yes or no. But one thing that I haven't heard is that, you know, when you build a memorial, you normally do it in honor of who you've lost. And we've lost two here in the county. One was with Tunstall Fire and Rescue, and one was with the Danville Lifesaving Crew. Are those gentlemen going to be included in this memorial?
So anybody else that's on the committee, y'all chime in at any time. But the intention is, yes, they will be, Vic. We have not actually got that far into it on exactly who. Obviously, being a memorial, we want to honor those that fell in the line of duty, first and foremost. Our thought process was, though, we have, and Coleman done most of this legwork, so if he wants to interject, but come up with a document kind of some parameters of what it will take to be on the memorial, because that's a really special thing and important to earn to be on that, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I don't want to misspeak, because gentlemen that come to, again, obviously the line of duty deaths, but some gentlemen that come to mind is Landon Worsham, the fire chief at Chatham Fire Department. He was fire chief for 50-some years. That's something amazing. You don't see that often in the whole U.S. And we had a fire chief here. I mean, he had recognition from the White House, being one of the longest-running fire chiefs. And so individuals like that come to mind of, hey, if they have some, letters of recommendation and some sponsorships or some nominations, we'd like to take a look at putting those type of individuals also on this and include them. So that's kind of where we're at. We have the document. Again, it's preliminary as well, but Coleman did a good job with it. And Coleman, if you want to touch on it, you're more than welcome.
Pretty well covered it. The main thing was we did want to make sure that those individuals did stand up to the standards, high standards that would be set for us to be included in that memorial.
Yeah, I see a two-pronged approach here, and one of the dilemmas that we had was the criteria by which a person would be included. So on the law enforcement side, it had to be a line of duty death or being killed in line of duty, and there is a difference. And there were some people that did not qualify. And so if you're looking at collectively being a memorial in honor of those that have made the ultimate sacrifice and those that have contributed in a substantial way, that's a good thing, because back in the early 70s when I was in a volunteer fire department, I think about Tommy Thompson, who was the father of Scott Thompson, Danville Fire Department, and Whitey Acres, and those guys had 30 and 40 years themselves. So you're going to have a long list of people that would be, you talk about Landham, I agree with that, but when you start talking about collectively throughout this county, it's going to be a long list of people that would be worthy to be included on that, so.
Yeah, and that's the hard part of it is we got to make sure, you know, because Coleman's exactly right, that they measure up to those standards. And
Well, Ben, if you recall, when you and I first talked about this well over a year ago, you know, I was looking primarily to the two that were killed in the line of duty, the gentleman with Tunstall Fire and Rescue and the other gentleman with the Danville Life Saving Crew. Of course, the crew was in the city, but he was in the county when he was killed, and I think that would surely qualify him as such, and that was in the 60s. But thankfully, other than that, you know, I don't know of anyone else that's died in the line of duty. You know, with our law enforcement side, one led to another, to another, to another. And you know, we ended up with 8 from the sheriff's office and 2 with the state police. That's 10. So, but anyway, I appreciate y'all's work on that.
we've been fortunate because it's a
We have.
very dangerous job. Two different things, but just like with the police department, it's very dangerous what these men and women go and do. So we've been fortunate not to lose more, and I hope, God forbid it ever, we lose
Absolutely.
anybody else. But I think we're on the right track of making sure, and we presented this to the association so everybody understands. We've been keeping them in the loop as we go, because I mean, it's important to those guys. They're the departments that run these calls every day. So we've kind of been getting their good graces on things before we move them forward. And so that was what I wanted to bring up tonight, and I guess I need to form that in a motion to ask the Board of Supervisors to take ownership of this memorial once it is completed. And again, that come from the executive team to basically to say it like that. So, so that's my motion. I'm making a motion tonight to ask the Board of Supervisors to take ownership of and maintain the Fire and Rescue Memorial once it is completed.
You send it to us, and we'll, my colleagues and myself, they'll take a look at it and go from there.
Okay. I'll entertain a second.
Second.
All right, second by Mr. Sellers. Any discussion on the motion? If not, roll call vote.
Ben Meeks,
Yes.
Alan Casper,
Yes.
Ward Rowland,
Yes.
Tim Cassell,
Yes.
Brian Shields,
Yes.
Coleman Mayhew,
Yes.
Kermit King,
Yes.
Steve Stallings, John Brown,
Yes.
Bert Sellers.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. All right, 13D, new business. This is going to be the drug license. So Scott, you helped me here, and Casey's in the room, so that's good. Casey called me before the meeting a couple hours ago, and we ran into a snag. So you guys know that the Schedule 6 drugs, which is like your IV fluids, saline, stuff like that, is now, we're out of compliance with the state. And to get in compliance, we had to get a DEA license from the Board of Pharmacy, drug license, to basically house those items in our departments. And so with that being said, it was decided for all of the volunteer agencies except for one to go under the county, because they have to have the license either way. The county does because they have their own medic trucks. But to put the volunteer agencies on that same license, and originally we were told that was doable. This body met about it as well as the association. That was the recommendation, and that's what the county attempted to do. Casey was notified today that they cannot do that now, because the Board of Pharmacology is saying that in order, and again, if I'm wrong, Casey, you speak up, in order for them to hold the license, then they would have to directly police the drugs. So they would have to distribute the drugs to the agencies and house them at the public safety building, which would be much more difficult, because then they got to have somebody to run to 12 different rescue squads to give out drugs. So, you know, they basically told them no. Board of Pharmacology said, you know, we're not going to process your license. You can't do it this way. So we're back to the drawing board on what do we do now? Does every agency go get their own license? I can tell you it's not an easy process. Gretna was the one lone agency that didn't go under the county because we have a different OMD. I've applied for a license and mine was turned down because they wanted more information on why we were applying for the license. I don't know what else to tell them other than we're a rescue squad and we can need it. But I'm working on that now. Casey sent me some stuff today to hopefully help me. But it's not as easy as they made it sound at first.
I mean, what does everybody else in the Commonwealth of Virginia do?
That's $1 million question.
I mean,
According to what the gentleman said from the Office of EMS, 97% of the counties in the state of Virginia is not in compliance. Correct?
that's pretty much what I expected, you know.
I don't want to misspeak, but I work for an agency, I work for a large company in Lynchburg and it has their own emergency team, and I can tell you they don't have their own drug license, and they told me, what are you talking about, when I asked them about it. So, and their OMD is my OMD at Rutland. So, I don't know, you know, who come down and said we had to do this, or what's the repercussions? I'm not saying we shouldn't be in law. We shouldn't be in compliance, but who come down and brought this to the attention, Scott, and said, you guys have to do this?
Yeah. Is it okay if I let Casey come down and discuss this?
Absolutely. I think that would be great.
Come on down here, Casey, Sue. This is a can of worms, I will tell you that.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets more confusing as we go, so hopefully we can, but we've got to sit down Monday and get this thing figured out.
Yes, we do. We got to figure out what's going on. Welcome, Casey.
Good afternoon. So it started with Western Virginia EMS Council probably about 6 months ago that came to the Fire Association on a Zoom meeting and was just giving us information on the drug boxes at the time through Western Virginia with the DEA changing rules and regulations. And then it's changed, talking with Doug Layton, who is everybody's EMS representation for the Office of EMS in Pittsylvania County. It was a new rule regulation change. They haven't been compliant throughout the year, but from my understanding, it has to be done before upcoming inspection. That's why they're pushing for all these agencies to do, so citations aren't issued.
Is that going to be for the entire Western Virginia region?
If I'm not mistaken, it's for the whole Commonwealth.
Oh, Commonwealth.
But I will tell you this, dealing with the Board of Pharmacy, if you've called them, they will tell you that they're extremely backed up and due to the COVID pandemic, so they are having a tough time with getting stuff. So I don't know if the state will give extensions with that or what the deal is.
Yeah, because I think the latest I heard was they're a month behind. Originally, you have to pay a fee and submit an application, they review it, and then they come out and inspect your building. They set it
Correct.
14 days, you tell them, December 20th, and so they come out, they have 14 days to come out or whatever and inspect what your setup is and make sure it's in compliance.
Correct.
Well, now, we were told that's like a month or more behind.
Exactly.
And everybody's inspections come up in March, if I'm correct. Everybody
March
in
and
this
April.
March and April, everybody in this county.
Yeah, my recommendation would be talk to the Office of EMS Representation, Doug Layton, just to verify that you guys. Yeah.
Because I know the drug box issue, which is a whole separate thing, so we don't want to get
Correct.
those twisted, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but I know, and again, I use my OMD, I'm not calling his name because I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I use our OMD, but he sits on the board for the state that comes up with these regulations, and he said, yes, it's coming down the pipeline that the drug boxes are going to go away. But he said, we are a long ways from that. He said, because we realize we cannot, and again, these are the doctors that's making these rules, we can't just flip the switch because we would lose so many rescue squads in the Commonwealth. We wouldn't be able to provide the care for the citizens in the whole Commonwealth because it's so many volunteer agencies and even municipalities. I mean, it's a big can of worms to tackle. And so he said it'll be slow, it'll be methodical, there'll be extensions, it'll be, forgiveness there. And again, back to what I originally said, I don't think we need to try to stay out of compliance, but it's frustrating when the other counties around us, they act like they don't even know nothing about it, and we're over here panicking on, are we gonna be able to get inspections in March? So, I was asked to bring it up. It's to you guys. What's y'all's wishes?
I mean, since this is something that the implications are statewide, I mean, throughout the Commonwealth, and the effects could be drastic, is this something that also possibly needs to involve discussion with the State Attorney General's office? Because if other counties are unaware of this, just how aware is your, state leadership like the Attorney General's office? Because they're basically, above all of the enforcement in the state.
Yeah, we may have to have some assistance from the county attorney on getting some answers to these questions. I mean, because the simple answer is, all right, every agency goes under their own license. But then again, Casey just told you, and I can tell you from previous knowledge on this matter, it's not so easy.
It's not, and anytime you have a change in leadership role or responsible party, you have to notify them within 14 days. Only certain people that can administer this stuff has to be the responsible party, plus you've got to have the OMD signature. You've got to submit policies, procedures, it's a whole packet of stuff.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, but the way I understood this is once you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah.
The DEA don't just say, okay, we gave you a drug license, y'all are good. They come every year.
It has
And
to
they
be
look,
renewed every year.
and they make sure that you're making the minimum requirements. And if you don't, you get citations. Up to, they could pull your license, I'm sure, and then you can't technically operate if you don't have the drugs you need. So,
Mr. Chairman, wasn't it also going to be an insurance issue when we became separate licensed agencies for pharmacology? Wasn't it going to be an increase in the insurance?
that's a good question. I can't remember right off because it's been, like I said, it's been 6 months we've been working on this, but we kind of thought we had it taken care of, and then it's come back up. But that would be a good question, Scott, if y'all could talk to staff and talk to our insurance. Because, that's also going to play in. We was just talking about budget. They say the insurance goes up, the insurance goes up. We have to have insurance. Is there any further questions for Casey? You gentlemen have any questions? What's public safety's, I got a question. I'd like to talk. What's public safety's plan of action?
I told him today on the phone to hold our license until we could discuss amongst, to find out if we need to proceed solo or wait and see what your pleasure was.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you. Any other questions for her? Thank you, Casey. So, again, this is one of those, feels like I'm beating a dead horse, kind of with the budget discussion. I don't really know how to proceed. I think what Alan was saying has some good base to it. Do we need to get our public safety officials and our county attorney to take this up a ladder further to the state and say, is this the requirements? And I'm not saying, Doug obviously knows what he's talking about. That's his job. He polices the state, this area, this region. But can we get some clarification? Can Doug come here and talk to us? Why is this happening? What's the implications going to be? If we don't make it, are we going to be able to get our license in March? And how does he recommend we proceed based off what other localities are doing?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
so my understanding is that the only reason why the individual agencies couldn't go under the county is because the county would have actually had to been the one to dispense the drugs.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
that was just an inconvenience, more or less. Is that correct?
Casey, is that correct? I don't want to misspeak. Yeah, I apologize. Casey did not add that
Okay.
part. I added the part, I was just trying to let you guys know, they would have to house it and distribute these drugs, but they have to do that now for 3 trucks, and,
So
but.
I guess my question is, that would eliminate that constant change of leadership that would be in charge of that box. It'd be eliminating the inspections of the individual stations as well. Is that correct? So to me, actually, by having the county dispense that, to me, we'd actually be saving the agency really time in the long run as well as responsibility. I mean, to me, that would actually be one key point for accountability, and that would satisfy everybody in that respect. I mean, to me, if our agency doesn't, we just do fire, but to me, I would rather have the county have that responsibility. That eliminates your question on the insurance as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean,
But some clarification from Doug Layton, Western Virginia EMS Council, would be good, because it's one thing to mandate something and say, this is what you've got to do, this is what we're going to inspect, we're going to cite you if you're not in compliance. Well, if you're going to put out a requirement, you need to put out a solution too.
Yeah, and because what I didn't like about the thing was, I agree with Coleman. I would rather not have to police it individually at Groton. I would rather have it under the county. But then I was told the state has to my knowledge, has nothing in writing that says you can't have 2 OMDs. You can have 2 OMDs for your agency. It's just 2 separate doctors that allow you to provide care. But then when we approached the county about putting Groton on this same license as everyone else, we were told, oh, no, you can't do that because you have 2 separate OMDs. So then the license would have to include 2 OMDs. Well, why can't he sign that same license? But he's just taking care of us, so they said they couldn't do that. So it's a lot of he said, she said, but, I kind of want some more information on it.
well, Mr. Chairman, I guess my question is, at the point we're at right now, we're looking for a motion from the floor whether to proceed with the single license for the county or just to hold off. I mean, is that what we're looking for right now?
Yes, sir.
And in my opinion, I'd like to make a motion that the county proceed with the single license and the county govern the distribution of those medications.
All right, got a motion on the floor. Is there a second? You second it, Tim? Okay. Any discussion on the motion? I would just like to add, I can support the motion because I'm not disagreeing with Coleman at all, but I still would like to have Doug Layton come to this meeting and explain to us how this process fully works, what the other localities are doing, and how we're supposed to make it work, even if that's if we go ahead with it. But where's this coming from? I feel like that we're owed that, at least that much. That's just my thoughts.
I feel like, with all due respects to the motion that's on the floor, and Mr. Mayhew and Tim both, that we're acting on something too fast that we don't have enough information to act on. It seems like that's a very good, obvious solution. I think we need to talk to the county attorney, and maybe let the public safety people, everybody needs to have some input in it. I hope we're not making a knee-jerk reaction here, and we need to get more input on it.
I guess maybe I have a little bit more advantage. I do have an EMS license, and I do understand the process that we're looking at, as well as I have the state and national certification. So I have a little better feel about what we're looking at, and I'm thinking about the ultimate responsibility of those drugs. I don't think it's taking anything away from those individual agencies. I think it's actually supporting them.
Except for Groton. And again, that's not the county or the other agency's fault, but we get left out. And they
I
say,
think-
well, you can drop your OMD. Well,
I agree with Mr. Sellers. I think we need more clarification, more answers.
so inspections for the agencies, all are in March and April. That's required by the state every 2 years. You have to get re-inspected. And again, I don't know the exact answer to this, and I'm not sure if Casey does either, but the goal, what they were claiming was the whole Commonwealth had to be on board with this and have this DEA license in place before those inspections took place. But like you heard Casey say, so much of the Commonwealth is not in compliance, and it's taken the Board of Pharmacology an extra month or longer to come out and do their inspections than what they usually take. There may be an extension, I don't know, given.
Mr. Chairman, did I understand you say that Gretna had applied, but they were turned down?
Yes, sir. We
Okay.
wasn't completely denied. They received our application, and they sent it back and said they needed further information. It was a couple minor things like some signatures, which we signed it, but we'll address that. But it was also they needed clarification on more for what the license was for and how it was going to be processed going forward on our side. And I don't know what else I'm supposed to tell them other than what I put on the application, that we're an EMS agency in Pittsylvania County that's trying to provide care, and I need drugs. I need these drugs. Casey did send me an email today with some documents that she sent with the county's license, and in hopes that will, some of the stuff from Western Virginia and the protocols and those type things, so that I can send in with a little more back into it.
And Mr. Chairman, I also did understand correctly that Casey stated that as a change within that agency, that had to be notified within 14 days.
Yes, sir, that's correct. If you have a
And
change in leadership, so you have to have an individual so the agency's responsible for the drug, for the license, but it has to actually be an individual who's going to sign and say they are responsible for policing the program. So like at Gretna, they chose the chief, so I had to sign my name saying that I'm going to police, that this is being done correctly. And if I step away from that position and the next man up, you have 14 days to notify them of this change, because that's who they come talking to say, what's
So
going
I
on.
guess my additional question is, does that board have to approve that change? I mean, is that something, just a guarantee for that change because you'll put that person in that position, or do they have to meet certain criteria?
That I'm not aware of. I don't think it's any requirements like a national or state license or anything. I don't know. Casey, do you know that?
Yes, from my understanding, so one of the drugs is IV solution. Have to be certified to administer the IV solution.
Okay. That's good to know. I didn't even know that. And I thought I'd read that document all the way through, which I can, so we're good, but.
So, I mean, guess that's what my concern is by these agencies. Each year we change leadership or have a potential change, as well as these are volunteers and they may not be available. So, I mean, I just putting that out there with the county having that directive, you have somebody that's going to be steady in that position. I mean, I understand the concern about legalities and wanting to question the law and know where this is all coming from, but I also am concerned that if we continue to delay, and then we may actually be putting our agencies at risk for noncompliance on an individual basis, and that's going to throw the burden back on somebody else. But I mean, that's,
Mr. Chairman, so this commission voted for the majority of the departments to go under the county.
Yes, sir. Everybody was to go under the county. The only one that didn't was Gretna, and that we initially tried.
Right.
And we was told we couldn't because we have a different OMD than everybody else in the county. But yes, sir, that
And
was
the
the
state
motion.
has come back and said that we can't do this.
State has come back and said you can't do it. So originally, the game plan was I'm gonna use Blair's for a minute here, because they was gonna be on the license. Dean out there at Blair's, he's gonna buy the IV solution, he's gonna lock it up in a cabinet, he's gonna have an individual responsible for making sure it's signed in, signed out, and that it's taken care of. But he was gonna be on the license under public safety, under the county. Board of Pharmacology come back and said you can't do that. They said if they're gonna be the ones on the license, even if Blair's is listed, they have to actually house the drugs at their buildings, and they have to dispense the drugs to the agencies. Yes, sir,
Mr.
Chief.
Chairman, I think it's some confusion for some. The drugs that we're talking about is saline, starter kits for IVs, that stuff, no narcotics. Where all of this originated is some of the hospitals want to get out of the drug box exchange with the agencies. Am I correct, Mr. Chairman?
That's what I understand.
Casey, is that not correct? Do what? Okay. It all originated, the hospital wants to get out of the drug box exchange with the narcotics. So where this is going is we start with Schedule 6, which is the IV solutions and that stuff, and then it goes to the narcotics to where you actually got to have a vending system and that type stuff. We originally talked about it being under the county and the county divvying it up. And that responsibility wasn't wanted to be taken on because they said it was a logistical nightmare. I understand. But it's also a logistical nightmare to have 12 different agencies with pharmacology license and somebody liable all the way around the county when it could be all housed under one umbrella.
So my takeaway from your statement is that you would agree that the county would be better served with
That was the
county.
original discussion.
Okay, and I thought we had already voted for that.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was our original motion. The association voted and unanimously passed to do it that way. This body voted and did it, asked to do it that way. I'm just stating, I support your motion. I'm just stating that I think we need more clarification. Go ahead, process the license, do what we got to do to be compliant, but we still need more clarification on where this is coming from and where it's going. Because once they get to the
I agree.
drug box deal, it's really going to open up some issues for this county, because we don't have the public safety staff to run this county. You got to have the volunteers to help. And the volunteer agencies are going to be hung out to dry if they got in the middle of the night and ain't got a drug box. I mean, are we going to call Casey and wake her up and say, hey, I need a drug box? Well, I mean, it's going to be some serious thought process once we get that far.
Well, I mean, but even at this level, I mean, that's why I say we need more clarification. Because, okay, if the Board of Pharmacy says that if the county holds the license, it has to be stored in a county-maintained sort of facility, so to speak. Well, what does that mean as far as, like you said, this covers saline, IV fluids, start kits. Does that mean you can only keep an amount on your ambulances? Does that mean you can't keep any surplus in your building? I mean, there are a lot of unanswered questions here.
And some of that I can answer for you, Alan. Yes, that is true. Yeah, that is right. You cannot have any stored in the building except for what's on the truck, because the truck is licensed. So if you're in the middle of the night and you run out of fluids, I mean, some of that stuff you can exchange at the hospital, but some of it you may not be able to. You're going to be out of fluids until you can get somebody from the county to dispense those drugs to you.
Is there a maximum amount you can keep on your ambulance?
I don't know the answer to that.
Again, back to we need more clarification.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I think we've run around this pretty well. I'll call for the question on this motion on the floor.
Okay. Question's been called. Call a roll, please.
Ben Meeks,
Just because I want more clarification, I'm going to vote no.
Alan Casper,
No.
Ward Rowland. No. Tim Cassell,
No.
Brian Shields,
Yes.
Coleman Mayhew,
Yes.
Kermit King,
No.
Steve Stallings, John Brown,
No.
Bert Sellers.
No.
All right, motion failed. So staff, will you, we're back to the drawing board on this matter. And I want to state, I completely agreed with what Coleman was saying, but I need more, we deserve, because another question that I have is now, how are you going to buy the drugs? Are y'all going to have to create another line item to each agency's responsible, and you take that out? Because now y'all are going to house them. If we go this route, you're going to have to house them. Who's going to buy them? Who's going to take care of that budget item?
Yeah, since it went this route this evening about 3 o'clock, we haven't really had time to sit down and discuss it, but this is something we got to handle and get on top of Monday morning. And we will, but we've got to get some of them questions answered ourselves.
Yeah.
But if you talk about us or anybody having to store these drugs, whether it's just IV fluid or whatever it is, you've got to have a secure location. It's got to be secure. Of course, heated and refrigerated, and you're going to have personnel manning it. This is a huge undertaking right here, and we got to get it figured out pretty quick from what it sounds like. Something bad happened up there.
Up in the attic.
But yeah, that's something we're going to have to get on Monday morning first thing.
A couple of the firemen going to check it out for us. We appreciate it, gentlemen.
But I mean, based upon what the discussion here, the fact that we're having this discussion is very good, because it sounds like the majority of the Commonwealth of Virginia is not even having this discussion. So it sounds like just in that respect, we are ahead of the curve slightly, if not much, on this issue compared to the rest of the state. So.
I'm gonna make a motion that staff talk to Doug Layton and the state to see the direction that they believe we need to take, and ask that staff request that he attend this next meeting for the commissioners and maybe even the association, because they definitely need to be involved, so that we can make an informed decision next month on how we need to proceed with these licenses.
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions. We have the same questions you do. We just, like I said, just found out this evening, so we've got to ask him same questions.
That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second to table this item pending further discussions with Doug Layton, and to have him, ask him or a representative from the state to come to our next meeting and answer these questions. Any discussion on the motion?
I think it may very well be possible that we have to meet more than one time a month between now and April to get some of this stuff resolved, because it's a lot of dynamics here that we may have to meet a couple times in January and February. I think we need to consider that.
Absolutely. I think, we're getting ready to be at Christmas, and then the first of the year, it's a whole lot between the budget and this item and everything else. It's a lot we got to get together on, and then with inspections in March and April, this might even be more important than the budget right now, as far as if you're talking about time. So I think you're right, Mr. Sellers. Our next meeting, we may have to plan an additional meeting that month, but we'll go off. That'll be based off what staff brings back and what Mr. Layton or anybody else that can come and give us. All right. Any other discussion on that motion? Then we'll call a roll. All right, call a roll, please.
Ben Meeks,
Yes.
Alan Casper,
Yes.
Ward Rowland. Tim Cassell,
Yes.
Brian Shields,
Yes.
Coleman Mayhew,
Yes.
Kermit King,
Yes.
Steve Stallings, John Brown,
Yes.
Bert Sellers.
Yes.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Motion carried. All right, we are down to other items from the commissioners. It's been a long night, guys, but I appreciate y'all's input. We're going to start over here with Scott, Deputy Director. If you go ahead, sir, if you have anything.
Well, I don't really have anything. Look like we've covered about all of it tonight, but I want everybody to have a good Christmas and a safe and happy New Year. And we'll get this stuff ironed out as best we can. We got to start somewhere.
Thank you, sir. Mr. J.D. Brown.
Nothing at this time.
Okay, Mr. Casper.
Just everybody have a good Christmas, be safe, and look forward to first of the year, continuing with fire and rescue in Pennsylvania County.
Awesome. Mr. Sellers?
Nothing.
Okay. Jimmy's not here tonight, but you guys keep Jimmy in your prayers. He's sick, so we'll keep him in our prayers. We'll come back. We're going to go over here to Dean. Mr. Chief Fowler.
I don't have anything. If y'all will, when you see the volunteers out, thank them for what they do. These guys work really hard and spend a lot of time, not only raising money, but running calls day after day. And it's a pretty tough situation out there that we're dealing with now and the calls that we're dealing with. So let them know you appreciate them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Mr. Rowland.
Echo what Dean says. Thank the volunteers again. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good job.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kazale.
No, I just want to tell everybody, have a Merry Christmas. Y'all be safe out there, and thank everybody.
Absolutely. Chairman Vic Ingram.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that you can say thank you quite enough, and we often say it, but it's heartfelt. I can promise you that. And while we're on the topic of thanking people, recently one of Blair's firemen was injured, and thankfully he's doing good. But one of the folks that need to be highlighted is Jeff Chitwood, one of the public safety folks that responded, that stayed with him throughout, and just went that extra mile. And his name and thanks needs to be mentioned there. But in addition to that, I do want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. This is a very special time of year. And again, thanks for all that you do.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Stallings. All right. Mr. Shields.
Mr. Meeks, thank you for a good year.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate everything you've done, and for those that have done the one-year term, thank y'all. I'm not sure who all they are, but to the newest member of the board, welcome. I'm glad you're here tonight, and to the volunteers, we always appreciate what they do. And to staff, thank y'all for all you do, the calls that you run. And hope everybody has a Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Mr. Colton Mayhew.
Just like to say Merry Christmas to everybody, and thank all the volunteers for everything you do. It is greatly appreciated, and for those who may not know, it is difficult. And I'd just like to say I appreciate the time that I was able to spend with this commission, and just want to remind you that we're here to support the citizens and the volunteers, and we want to make that our primary focus. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Vice Chair, Chairman King.
Oh, yes. First of all, welcome our new supervisor, Mr. Tucker. Thank you for serving. Thank you for representing the citizens in the Bannister District. Also, thank you to the volunteers and public safety for the job that you do. And like I said, these guys that stepped up to come and join us on this commission, we really appreciate it. Because some of us are the old guys, you know, that was on the last one, but we appreciate y'all accepting the challenge and coming in here with us. There's a lot of good ideas in here. I also wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, sir. So just like the rest of my colleagues, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I want to thank this commission for allowing me to be your chairman. I hope I've done it fair. I want to remind you, in January, we will have our reorganizational meeting here to elect a chair and vice chair. So if you guys have anybody that you want to serve in that position, next month will be that opportunity. I do believe it's 4 that's up for term ends to come off the commission. I was told to Chris to remind you guys, and I do apologize, I'm not exactly sure who all it is. I know JD's one of them. But if you wish to serve, continue serving, we'd be glad to have you. Just you need to communicate that with your board member. And they will ultimately be the ones that have to reappoint. I think they'll have their reorganizational meeting in January, and then that's when the time they'll have to make their decisions on who's on the commissions and boards. So, again, if you want to continue to serve, please reach out to your board member and let him know that you wish to continue serving. I believe JD's the only one that's actual quadrant that's up, so the northeastern quadrant departments need to meet and decide if they want to continue with JD, if he'll continue, or if they want to go a different route. But thank you to all. If you know, some of you don't return next month, I appreciate you. This was a new commission, but like Vice Chair said, I was on the old commission as well, and I really feel like this commission has done good. We've made some good strides. We've had a few debates in here, but most of the part, we've all done what's needed to be done for the citizens and got along and made progress. As y'all heard tonight, we have a lot of big fish we're trying to fry right now. So I'd like to see all of you return. So I hope y'all reach out to your board members and do return. I wanted to touch on Luke. I hope he don't mind calling us by name, but Luke Fowler, he was the individual hurt on that fire. Had a traumatic incident, but he's got a good spirit and good surgeons, and I believe he's going to make a full recovery. But that shows you the heart of a volunteer. Luke works with me over at BWX, and he had been working about 3 weeks. He'd been waiting for 2 years. We have to have a security clearance, and he had been waiting 2 years to get his security clearance. And he finally got in, and 3 weeks working in, he goes out and has an incident happen to him. And, at first they didn't know if he'd ever even, if he was going to lose his entire foot or anything like that. Again, I think he's going to make a full recovery. But his first 2 questions was when am I going to be able to go back to my job, and when am I going to be able to run calls again? So that says a lot about a volunteer and what they do. These guys are normal working people that are giving their time on their days off and put their livelihood up at stake. So just thank you to the volunteers and what you do. Thank you to the staff. Scott, you got to get in the hot seat tonight, and a pretty long meeting. So I told you don't do too good of a job. Chris is going to probably let you stay there.
He's coming back.
Is he coming back?
Yeah, he'll be back.
Well, we'll welcome him arms open next meeting. But no, Scott, we appreciate you. You're doing a great job. And Mr. Tucker, thank you again for coming tonight. I think it's important to see our board members here, and we're glad to have you on board. I think you're going to be a true asset to this county and to fire and rescue. So that's all I have, and we'll adjourn the meeting.
I sent Bucky Dawson, school board chairman. He's got